Hello and welcome to today's video. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Roya for those of you that are new, but today is going to be a really fun day because we are going to be reading spooky middle grade books. We're going to be getting snacks from Trader Joe's, like their new fall snacks. We're going to be hitting the bookstore at one point, making coffee. It's just going to be a great time. Before we get started with the vlog, I wanted to show you what 3 books I will be reading this vlog, or at least trying to finish. My goal is to definitely read at least 2.5, but I'm hoping to finish all 3 this week. So I have 3 really cute looking middle grades. And for those of you that don't know middle grades or aren't familiar with them, they're basically books meant for middle grade children. I would say from the age of like 9 to even 13. To put it into perspective, I would read a middle grade book if I was in like 5th, 6th, 7th grade, even 8th grade, honestly. But where I'm almost 30, to this day, I still love reading middle grades. I think they're so charming and whimsical, and usually they're like magical and fantastical, and they just have such exaggerated but yet hopeful and happy kind of view of the world that we don't always get in our adult books. And I particularly love illustrated middle grades as well. And I just always reach for middle grades. They're so cozy, and especially in the colder seasons and in the fall, I love reading middle grades. I wanted to introduce to you 3 of the books that I'm reading in this vlog. The first one is called The Clackity by Laura Senf. This one is following our main character whose aunt goes missing into a slaughterhouse, a building, an abandoned building that she is not supposed to go into. She encounters the clackity creature, and this creature basically makes a deal with her and says, if you can bring back this guy who, I guess he was a murderer back in his time, like go through these houses, you can bring back your aunt. On her journey, she meets like penny-faced ghosts, she meets witches, she meets weird creatures. She's trying to like look out for herself and at the same time try and find her aunt. But yes, basically the clackity will help her for a price. She has to bring back the ghost of this guy, and then she also has to find her aunt. This sounds really cozy. It sounds kind of scary. Not really like any other middle grade I've ever read, but I'm very excited to read this one. The next book is called The Halloween Moon by Joseph Fink. And so this one's got a really cute cover. It looks kind of like there's like Halloween, like community, like trick-or-treating, and then like on the other side, it's like an alternate reality. Just based off of the back of the book, we're following Esther, and Esther loves Halloween like it's her whole life. She loves trick-or-treating, but she's 13 and her parents have now told her like, you are too old to go trick-or-treating. You're going to creep the other kids out. She doesn't like that very much, but something happens when she does ultimately go trick-or-treating. Something's off with the whole night. The neighbors, the vibes are just not it. Trick-or-treaters are not acting the way they should. And so she gets paired up with a bunch of people that she wouldn't really get paired up with, like unseemingly group of friends, and they try and figure out what's wrong with their community and what has happened to their Halloween night. And then the last book, I will admit I don't know a whole bunch about, but I only know about it because so many other YouTubers, and I think even on TikTok, I've seen how popular this book is, and it actually sounds kind of scary. It's called Scritch Scratch by Lindsay Curry. The main character is not really into the paranormal. She's more of a reasonable person, but her dad is, and her dad leads these like paranormal ghost tours on a bus. Has her first encounter there, and I believe that the ghost on this bus, it's like a boy, has followed her home. And so now she's kind of like, things are going on, she's hearing things, you know, and by the cover, Scritch Scratch, like the name, I'm assuming she's going to start hearing things. So this sounds really scary, and I'm very excited to read this one too. So those are the 3 books that I'm hoping to finish this week. But of course, we're going to start off, you know, this vlog as one usually does, with some coffee, with some Trader Joe's shopping for fall treats, and of course, a Barnes & Noble visit, because no reading vlog is complete without a Barnes & Noble visit. back from the bookstore. I just wanted to give you guys a short little haul of what I got. Again, being a millennial and loving things like Goosebumps and scary stories to read in the dark, I of course could not resist getting, okay, so this is so goofy, but I got, well, this is a middle grade vlog, so I guess this is kind of appropriate, but I got some Geronimo Stilton books, and I don't know about you guys, but Geronimo Stilton was my life when I was like 9 years old. I was obsessed with his books, particularly the spooky ones with all the like different pictures, and like all of the words had like, you know, exaggerations. They were colorful, like they described the word itself, like the word cold would like actually look cold. And then of course Goosebumps. I mean, I don't know if you guys have read or seen the show on Netflix, but Goosebumps was part of our childhood back in the early 2000s. A few of some of the popular ones, obviously I didn't really look that intensely at any of the summaries because they're Goosebumps. I mean, I've never had any complaints about these. These would be perfect to watch with like maybe even Goosebumps in the background with like s'mores and like candy, and then reading it in the dark. I think this would just be so great, and it would bring back so much nostalgia for me. And then this book in this haul is not a middle grade by any means, but it was actually on the banned bookshelf, which I thought was really interesting. It's called Dead Until Dark by Charlene Harris. So this one's a vampire tale. All I know is that a girl encounters a vampire. If I'm not mistaken, I feel like there's a show called True Blood, and the character's name is Sookie. So maybe that show is based on this book. So I just picked this up because why not? But yeah, that's all I got from the bookstore.
So we just got back from Trader Joe's on Saturday morning because I know that their fall stuff is starting to trickle in. First week of September, so there's not a whole bunch of stuff, but there is a lot of stuff coming in already. I got maple leaf cookies, which these look so good. And then of course apple cider donuts, because you just have to have apple cider donuts. And then I saw these in the checkout line, the Cinnadragons. So I love like cinnamon candies and like cinnamon gum and stuff like that. I'm not a huge fan of the spicy cinnamon stuff, but this looks really, really interesting. And I feel like it just really like embodies like fall. So I got that. And then these two items aren't from Trader Joe's. I actually got this maple syrup at Home Goods because I've never had authentic maple syrup. And then I got some candy corn from the dollar store to add to my little pumpkin jar. Okay, and I know I said in my previous video when I was decorating for fall that I got everything I needed, but you know, Saturday morning got distracted, went to Home Goods and then the dollar store. So I just want to show you what I got. This is like a glowing, like flameless candle, and I think this just looks so cozy. So I picked that up from Home Goods. And then since I've been drinking coffee more, I use these cups because they have the lid and the straw. So I have a Cricut, so I think I'm gonna like design some of these cups just to have them for when I drink coffee on the go. And then I got this really cute little like ceramic statue of the pumpkins with the witch hat on, and it has this like scented bag in it which smells really good, so I got that. And then from the dollar store I got some maple leaves just to put around the house. And then I got this little cute bucket that I'm gonna put like a flameless tea light candle in. It'll look really nice at night. And then I got this as well, just like little pumpkin lights. I think I'm gonna use these at work just to decorate my desk a little. I also got these. So I went to Target and I bought some more stuff. So mostly just for my desk. But I got some of these for my desk and some for at home. And also this is from Home Goods, and it's a crisp apple and spicy woods, and it's also soy, which is really good. And the jar is really cute, so I'm gonna keep the jar and put things in it when I'm done. All right, guys, excuse me for the garbage quality right now, but it is before sunset. Or not sunset, it's before sunrise. It's 6:14 a.m. and I'm heading to the gym on Monday morning before work, and I'm gonna bring Clackity with me, and I'm gonna read it while I'm on either the treadmill or the bike. So let's go.
What? Dude, what is even happening right now? This witch literally turned into a tree. Like, the witch turned into a tree. Like, she became the house that this girl has to go through and get the key out of and stuff. Like, oh man, I love it. Putting you down because it's about to get real over here. But this book is wild, and it's a middle grade. So I'm halfway through it. Actually, I'm more than halfway through it today. And I've been reading it at the gym, like on the treadmill, so I haven't been able to provide much of an update, obviously, because I'm like walking uphill and all that. But it's a middle grade, so you're expecting something a little bit cute, maybe whimsical, but still creepy, obviously spooky vibes. But this is actually kind of scary. And even for me, I'm almost 30 years old. Like, this book is kind of scary. And so there's this girl, Evelyn, Evie, as she likes to be called. Her aunt, I believe, is some sort of like medium or a witch or something like in that vicinity. And she goes to like a meat processing like building that is, I believe, abandoned because a lot of things happen there. She's doing stuff. She disappears and Evie follows her. She basically has to go into like 7 houses or something, and each house has like its own personality and its own problem that she has to solve and like riddle. The first house that she goes in is literally like the ghost of her childhood home, which was burned down while her parents were in it. So she has to deal with like the trauma of going through this home that's not even real, but she's standing in it. And then there's like witches, people from like the 20s that have pennies on their eyes, but they're helping her go through like the maze of doors that's in this one house. And all the while, this ghost of this like murderer dude who back in his day like did a lot of bad stuff is following her but can never really get to her. And this clackity creature has promised her that she will be okay in these houses, but like it's also watching her and following her, manifesting itself into different animals. So like she's in a boat, and then there's clackity fish that's like possessed by the clackity and it's watching her. She has this bird on her shoulder that can like guide her and give her tips or keep her safe. Yeah, she's all on her own trying to get her aunt back and stuff and dealing with everything. It even like goes into how she has panic attacks and how like her aunt helped her with panic attacks, how she's like managing that while she's on this like super wild quest to save her aunt. Really liking it so far. Definitely not what I expected, but it's really good. And the houses themselves are like super, super creepy. So like I'm very excited to finish this one and let you know what I think about it. Hello, and welcome to another day in the spooky reading vlog. So I have finished the Clackety, and I will provide my review for that book at the end of the video when I talk about all the other books I've read. But overall, to sum it up, I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was creepy. If I was a middle grader and I read that, I'd definitely be a lot more creeped out. I think the author did a really good job. And I believe there's a second book coming out. So I'm definitely going to pick that up when it comes out this year, I think in October or November. But anyway, I have started The Halloween Moon by Joseph Fink. And so far, I know that it is about a girl named Esther who likes trick-or-treating and refuses to hear any criticism on why she's too old to trick-or-treat and things like that. And we haven't gotten to this part yet, but she's supposed to find out that the town is like not acting right, something is off, the trick-or-treating is not the way it should be, and so it's up to her and a few other kids to figure out what's going on. On that note, starting to get a little bit cooler outside, the sun is not as intense, it's not as hot, and I did today what I do usually every September. I've been doing it since I was younger. When it starts to get cooler, I open the windows in my room, I put down a blanket, usually a spooky blanket and some pillows, I grab my book, I grab like a hot drink, sometimes like a snack or some sweets, and I just read until it either gets too hot and I remember it's still summer, or it gets dark and I have to do something else. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm already 12 pages into this. Nothing has happened yet. It's just introducing the characters and the settings. So yeah, let's get into it. Apologies in advance for my slightly ragged appearance. I've got some eczema flaring up on my eyelid, which is just great, but yeah. Anyway, so reading The Halloween Moon, so far I'm really liking it. Like I said before, our main character is Esther, and she's obsessed with Halloween. She's 13 years old, so her parents have finally sat her down and they were like, look, you are too old to be trick-or-treating. The younger kids are going to be creeped out when they see this older kid trick-or-treating with them. Obviously, she doesn't take it well. She even devises like a plan with her best friend who doesn't like trick-or-treating and convinces him to sneak out trick-or-treating with her. I haven't gotten to the part where it's actually Halloween yet. This is all happening the day before Halloween. And I am on chapter 7. And now she has like encountered these two ice cream trucks, and one of these ice cream trucks is driven by a guy who sells pumpkins, and this driver is kind of like a creepy old man based off what she said. She described him as like sullen and just off. So she's not really approaching this truck. And then he apparently has a brother, and that's the apple man, or he has a brother, and his brother sells apples on his ice cream truck. And this guy's younger. She gets a little bit more of like a pleasant vibe from him at first, but then she starts seeing that he's a little bit icy. There's something off about him and strange. And she figures this out when she like turns around while she's walking away with her dad, and this guy's just staring at her, like flat out staring at her. And she's already creeped out because kids have already started trick-or-treating the day before Halloween, and they were dressed up in these really old torn up costumes, and one of the kids was wearing like a ghost costume and she couldn't see his face under the mask. She just got really evil vibes from like that whole scenario. So now she's officially creeped out, and that's where we're at so far. So I'm really excited to see what happens next. Hello and good morning. Now that I have made my coffee, which is very yummy, I'm able to wake up and finally finish The Halloween Moon. I'm about 40 pages out from finishing it, so definitely going to be able to finish it today. And in general, I am behind on my Goodreads goal, so I need to catch up on that, especially where I'll be going on a trip this Friday. I know I'm not going to have as much time to film, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this today and keep going. So yeah, let's go do it. Also, I love pancakes on a weekend, particularly Saturday mornings. So I'm thinking to make like pumpkin pancakes to see how that goes with like cinnamon butter, kind of like Gilmore Girls inspired. So let's see how that goes. Hello, it is me. It is about 11 o'clock at night on day 3 or 4, I've lost count, but I have finished The Halloween Moon and I enjoyed it. It was definitely different, but more thoughts and opinions at the end of this video.
It is now time to start Scritch Scratch, and here's my little Dracula bookmark, but I am very excited to start this one. I think it is the scariest one out of all of them, so I kind of saved the best for last. After reading a little bit of this one, I'm going to call it a night, and then I will catch up with you tomorrow. Okay, quick intermission from reading. Since we are going to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal, I'm gonna make friendship bracelets for Halloween Horror Nights because friendship bracelets aren't just for the Swifties. Got Mary Shelley and Edgar Allan Poe on it. That's so cool. This is all Edgar Allan Poe style stuff. Okay, you guys, I made my first Halloween Horror Nights friendship bracelet. It's pretty simple. I just put HHN. So I'm gonna go ahead and start brainstorming and thinking about some Universal Studios themed friendship bracelets.
Hello, I have returned from my trip and I am ready to film the ending of this video. I'm going to explain all 3 books that I read and just give you like a summary and then my overall review of them. Obviously take my opinions and my reviews with a grain of salt because everyone's different. So the first book that I read, as you know, was The Clackity by Laura Senf. And this one took me off guard, honestly, and it took me by surprise because even though it clearly like marketed for middle graders, I think this book was a little intense. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I think for the middle grade group of readers, it might be a little bit intense just because the visuals and the details were so vivid, and honestly a little bit scary. But I mean, the author did a really good job writing a scary story, so I will say she hit the mark on that. Evie lives in Blight Harbor, which in this like time is the most haunted city in America, supposedly, or in her country. Things happen there, and her aunt goes missing in an abandoned slaughterhouse, which she explicitly tells Evie not to follow her into, not to go into whatsoever. Evie goes in, obviously, because she wants to save her aunt. She wants to bring her back home, and she comes in contact with this creature called the clackity. And the clackity essentially says, like, okay, we've got your aunt. If you want to go get her, you have to go through these houses and you have to bring back this ghost guy. This guy apparently was like a murderer in his time. And so she now has to go find her aunt, be able to survive the whole thing, and then somehow manage to bring a ghost out of it. She meets different people inside the houses. Like in one of the houses, she meets 3 sisters whose mother is like the mother witch. And then in another one, she meets these ghosts that have pennies on their eyes. At the end, I believe she's able to save her aunt. I think another interesting thing about this book is that, especially for a middle grade audience, it kind of touches on how this main character gets panic attacks and how she's able to kind of deal with it, like in a really crazy and scary situation, and how she's managing it. And I think for just like young readers and like a young main character such as herself, that it's interesting to see younger children dealing with things that adults are also dealing with. But it was just really refreshing to see such like a young character in a middle grade book having like, you know, the guts to be able to do something like this. A lot of children, a lot of kids are braver than a lot of adults. So I really enjoyed this book. I don't really rate books by stars because there's so many things I think that could go into a rating. I would say overall, for like a really atmospheric, spooky book to read in the fall, this definitely hit the mark for me. And I mean, even while I was reading it at the gym, while I was reading it like everywhere else, like it was just really cozy and it really sucked me into the story. And I think the author did a really good job writing this book. So I do recommend this one, and I'm glad my first book for this reading vlog was a success. The next book that I read was The Halloween Moon, and this one was by Joseph Fink. So again, this one was about Esther Gold, who loves Halloween. She's not quite a teenager, but she's approaching teenagehood. I believe she just turned 13. Her parents have basically told her, you're way too old to trick-or-treating, like you're probably going to creep some of the kids out, you need to grow up, you're an adult now. And she's just not having it. I think even at one point her parents tried to ground her, And then she's like getting her best friend to like lie to his mom and basically say like, we're doing this, but really we're gonna go trick-or-treating. And her best friend does not like trick-or-treating, and all the while Esther's getting bullied at school by a girl named Sasha, and we find out that Sasha's got her own problems, that she's also getting bullied and she's taking it out on Esther. Esther's kind of got this like situation, like does she go out trick-or-treating and, you know, go behind her parents' back, or does she ultimately make the decision to grow up and to let go of her love for Halloween? And so of course she goes behind her parents' back and she goes trick-or-treating, or she tries to, and then she realizes something is completely off with the town. The trick-or-treaters are not the way that they're supposed to be. It seems that some of the adults are in some sort of mysterious like sleep, they're just unconscious, and people are just not acting the way they should. There's something off about just like the sky, the weather, and everything. And she finds out something is ultimately wrong. And before all this, she like comes in contact with two people who drive, I think one of them's like a pumpkin truck and the other one's an apple truck, and supposedly they're both brothers, and one of them's like an older guy and the other one's younger, but the younger one scares her more than the older guy, and he gives off more like icy, like creepy vibes. And now she's wondering, are these two involved in what has happened on this night? Like, what's wrong with the trick-or-treaters? I think she goes to sleep and then she sees them outside of her window doing some sort of ritual with some of the trick-or-treaters that she saw that did not appear right. Like, they had really dirty, ragged costumes. So then her and her best friend and then the bully, Sasha, they all get together because their parents have all passed out. They're all asleep. Whole town's asleep, and only a select few of people, them, and then one of her neighbors, which she never really understood. He's a dentist, and she just never really was on the same page as him. They now have been tasked to figure out what's going on. This like unseemingly group of people who you would never think would get along are now trying to figure out what's wrong with the town. I'm going to spoil this book though, so if you don't want to hear what happens after this, just skip ahead to the next portion of the video. But basically there is a Halloween queen who has been following Esther around. She's like a woman in like an old time dress, and she is the one putting the adults into like a coma, into a sleep. And Esther basically faces her one-on-one, and after the battle with her, she decides that maybe it is time to change. Maybe I should stop trick-or-treating. She basically does that, and then everything kind of resolves itself, and her parents are like back to normal, and everyone else's parents are back to normal. I did enjoy the book. I think there was some good, like, complex character development and then interesting characters as well. But of course, like with some middle grades, there is kind of that cheesy factor, and I think there was a little bit of that in this book. But overall, it was a really good book, and I did enjoy it. And then the third and last book that I read for this vlog, and this one is actually my favorite. This one is Scritch Scratch by Lindsay Curry. So I actually finished this, yeah, last week. And while I was heading down on my trip, I finished this on the airplane. It was just that good, and it definitely lived up to the hype for me. So from what I had heard about this book was that it was super, super scary, and even the back of the book like sounds super scary. Like just the, I'll read just a few lines. I'm trying to drift off to sleep when a faint scratching sound starts up in the wall behind my head. Claire is being haunted. The boy from the bus wants something. So this, like when I picked this up at the bookstore, I was like, yes, I'm buying this. I don't know what it is about, but obviously from the reviews and from just skimming the back, I was like, I am absolutely buying this book. Quick synopsis. So Claire has no interest in anything spooky or scary or anything to do with ghosts. Her dad runs a business of doing spooky like bus ghost tours, and they live in Chicago. And so he's taking his bus to haunted or like locations that have had trauma where they're supposedly haunted, and that's essentially how they make their living. And one night something happens with the driver, and Claire's father asks Claire to step in and help him because he can't leave any of his, customers on the bus unattended. She's kind of sitting there against her will because she needs to help her dad. And then at one of the stops, Claire like notices there's a little boy on the bus, and it seems that she is the only one who can see him and nobody else can see him. Starts acting strange, and her father picks up on it a little, but it seems that she tries to like shove it under the rug and like act like nothing happened. And then throughout the next few days, like things start going wrong. She opens up a drawer and it's filled with water. She's getting mysterious like numbers written as like some sort of a code that she has to break. She doesn't know what's going on. And at the same time, like in her personal life, Claire feels like her best friend, her friendship with another girl at school has been jeopardized by another girl who has befriended her best friend. So now she feels like she's losing her best friend. She's losing her mind. Like she's being haunted by this ghost, and there's no denying it at this point. Then at one point, the scratching, the scritch scratch starts. And at like night, she starts hearing it. She's literally going insane. She's going to school. She's not getting enough sleep. Her best friend picks up on it. And at the same time, like, she's trying to confide in her best friend. Like, she's not able to say what she wants to say in front of her best friend's new friend. And then she gets mad at her best friend, mostly because of this new situation that she feels like she has been replaced by this new girl. Friendship starts to get a little bit rocky. Her and her brother and her friend all like come to understand their differences. They sort out their misunderstandings and they work together to figure out what's going on. At first, of course, her friends don't believe her that she's being haunted, but then something happens in the girls' bathroom at school. And then they figure out that something is going on. There's a common theme with water. There's like flooding. And eventually, like, they go to her house and her parents' bathroom just starts to flood. And so they're freaking out because their house is getting destroyed by this ghost at this point, and they don't know what to tell their parents. And then eventually when their parents get home, they say like, this is what happened, the bathtub overflowed. And their parents are like, are you joking? Because like everything is fine. And so they like figure out that the ghost is not really displaying any of these things to grown adults. He is only doing these things for the kids to see. And so they start trying to put pieces of this puzzle together, like, what's with this number? What is the theme? Why is there water everywhere? Why is all of this only being shown to kids? And so they go to museums, they talk to people, they try to figure out like, what is the significance of this place that we stopped at on the bus tour? Is that where the ghost like started following Claire home? I will spoil it too, so spoiler warning here. If you don't want to know what happens, then just skip ahead to the end of the video. Basically what happens is, and I didn't even know this myself, so this was really fascinating because I do like historical fiction. It had to do with the sinking of the Eastland ship, which a lot of people don't know about because the Titanic kind of overshadowed it. The ship sank so fast and it killed so many people. This ghost happened to be one of the little boys that was on this ship, and I think he was only like 7 years old or something. But some of the messages that he was leaving for Claire were like, where are they? And he was referring to his parents. And the number, I believe the number was like the tag that they put on his body in the morgue. So she figured out what that number was and she went to the museum. She figures out like this boy was one of the unclaimed boys that was in the morgue after the accident of the ship, and no one had claimed him. So they figured out that this ghost probably feels like he's not at rest, he's not at peace, no one has claimed him, he doesn't have a family. Works with her dad, who ultimately finds out that this ghost has been haunting her. He writes a book bringing some light to the boy and his family, and then there's like a proper plaque just like bringing light to this boy that nobody knew about until this whole thing happened to Claire. And she feels like physically, like once all this has happened, the ghost is like peacefully departing her, finally leaving her alone, and he's happy. I really, really enjoyed it, not just because of like the theatrical aspect, like all the spooky things that were going on, but because there is like some truth to this. And there was, you know, this sinking in Chicago that not a lot of people know about and more people should know about, was this person. And he lost his family and he lost his life at such a young age. And I think that's what makes this even creepier, is that it has some truth to it. It's partially true. So glad that I picked it up. And I think if she happens to write another book in this type of series or in this type of manner, I will absolutely read it because I really love this book. Okay, but that is it. I have read all 3 books that I wanted to read in this vlog. I really hope you've enjoyed watching. I definitely had a lot of fun reading it and making this video, but I will go ahead and sign off here and I'll see you all in the next video.